Hey guys, what's up? It's iPhone here. It's 2 in the morning and I'm making a video about the Volnus because, yeah, that's just how I roll. And let's go ahead and take a look at the weapon and its stats. So, the Volnus is a unique weapon because it's a hammer, but it looks like an axe, but it's a hammer, and it's actually pretty cool. I like the weapon. You go for like a blood rush body count build on it because I mean it's melee weapons. Melee weapons benefit a lot from like blood rush body count, or in our case, blood rush drifting contact, because you know the difference between drifting contact and body count is 2 seconds, so it's not that big of a deal. And that, and you get like your extra stuff on top of that. So this is kind of a weird build. The reason I'm running things like, you know, condition overload and weeping wounds is because the weapon has a pretty good 42% status. You could also like increase the status chance on this weapon as well if you either throw on something like dual stat elemental mods, which you do have the option to do. So we could replace, you know, our Fever Strike and Shocking Touch with those two mods, and obviously up our status chance even more. We could even go as far as getting our 100% status chance, but because we're using this Blood Rush and Drifting Contact combo, we get 40% status chance from this alone. And then we also get plus 45% status chance, and this stacks with your combo multiplier. So this is like another version of Blood Rush, except it's for status chance, right? So that's why I opt to use Fever Strike and Shocking Touch, because we're going to have a build up off our status chance anyway, along with a build up of our crit chance and stuff like that there. So we're going to be critting. We're going to be dealing status, which means we're going to be dealing slash procs, corrosive procs, and we're also going to just be, you know, dealing overall more damage as we keep on attacking enemies, because our damage is scaling with this blood rush and drifting contact combo. Okay, so obviously this means that we have berserker on here because we're going to be critting at least a decent bit whenever we have our blood rush drifting contact going. So it just made sense for me. Also, like with this weapon, chances are, like, you're going to kill enemies rather fast with it because of all the different things you can do with it. You can do knockdowns, you can do, like, very damaging finishers and stuff like that. So, you know, we have our 18% critical chance of base, which isn't very high, 42% status chance, which is okay. We have our impact damage here at 58.3, puncture damage 84.8, slash damage 121.9, which is good. And then we have our corrosive damage, which is 477. There's a lot of different things you could do with this build. Like, if you really wanted to, you could replace Weeping Winds with something like maybe Organ Shatter, because you are going to be creating with this build, of course. So it might make sense to have that on there. Condition Overload is on here because it'll give me more damage whenever I do actually, you know, end up proccing my status chance and stuff like that. So it just makes sense to have on, because it is just going to give us like a flat melee damage bonus for every status that we have on enemies. So, you know, it just makes more sense, at least in my opinion. So, Crushing Rain is the stance, and that is pretty much that. I'm going to swap to a frame which isn't Gara, because Gara actually has a very powerful passive, which basically does like a miniature radial blind. Like, it has a percentage chance to do a miniature radial blind, and we want to basically avoid having that happen, because, like, you know, I don't want basically, like, you know, finishers to be happening while I'm showing you guys the DPS or potential DPS off the weapon. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just straight up kill him just by using the weapon and, you know, bashing away at the heavy gunner. So it's going to be a heavy gunner. We're going to get him to level 150. So obviously our damage to begin with will be very mediocre, because we won't have our blood rush body count weeping wounds already built up. But if we were to attack a group of enemies, it would be, you know, a lot different. So, you know, I'm just going to do the basic combos on him. You'll see that the weapon is rather slow to begin with, but whenever you start getting your crits in, you'll see that it starts to speed up, and it actually has a very fast attack speed. Now, because, you know, we're building up our combo counter, we're starting to build our status chance, and we're proccing statuses on him, and we're just doing, like, a shit ton of damage. So that enemy died very fast, like, super fast. Now, what you could also potentially throw in is a few different combos, right? So you could do something like your blocking combo if you're using the same stance as I am, and then what will happen is the enemy will have a chance to get like knocked down or impact procced or whatever, which then opens them up to finisher attacks, which can allow you to kill the enemy like a lot faster as well. I actually really like these stances for the hammers for some reason, just because they kind of click with me, you know. They just work very well in combat, and they're very effective for taking down enemies. So to me, it just makes a lot of sense. Now, you could potentially up the DPS of this weapon by using something like, let's say, for example, you know, Valkyr and our Warcry, which will, you know, make it so that you attack a lot faster. It'll allow you to build your Blood Rush body count combo a lot faster as well, and will just allow you to build up like a lot more DPS, right? So you can see how fast that enemy died there, you know. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and spawn in like a bunch of heavy gunners here. We're going to just go ahead and spawn in 20, and we can see how fast we can take them down just by using our melee weapon, right? Because, like, you know, it is kind of in the same melee weapon, in my opinion, at least. We can't get knocked down, so we're just going to build up our Blood Rush body count here and our Weeping Wounds and just see how far we can, you know, get into killing these guys. So you see, once we have the damage going, it's really good damage, and the more status effects that we have procced on the enemies, then the more damage we just kind of deal to them, because, I mean, that Condition Overload is a very powerful mod to have on. Obviously, you could probably, you know, speed up your killing potential here if you were using, like, the stance to the full advantage, because, like, you know, you have those knockdowns and stuff like that, you have your finisher damage, etc., which is something to take into consideration. You just seen an orange crit come out there, so you can see that because we've been attacking for a while, we are getting those orange crits to come into play there, which is going to mean even more DPS, which is really awesome. There's another pretty beefy orange crit, so the weapon's just insane in my opinion. Like, this is probably like one of my favorite melee weapons to date, because of just how, you know, fun it is to use, and you know, just the feeling of it, I guess. Like, it's a fast swinging hammer that looks like an axe, and, like, you know, like glass shards shatter from it whenever it hits the ground. So I don't know about you, but I think it's pretty cool. Like, what is there not to like about it? So you could keep on building this Blood Rush body count combo for pretty much ages. You know, you could get this all the way up to red crits if you really wanted to. You'll start to notice that our orange crits are becoming more and more sort of frequent. It just depends on how far you're willing to go with your combo counter and how good you are at sort of keeping it up, you know. That sounds so bad, but that's really the only way I can explain it without, you know, going too much into detail. But that's all of the level 150 heavy gunners killed there. We were barely using, like, our sweeping combo, so the blocking combo and sweeping them up and then doing the finisher damage on them. It was more or less purely just using, you know, just spamming E. So, you know, you could increase the DPS of this even further if you really wanted to, by, like, running, like, a viral or radiation build on it. Like, if you were using this versus enemies that had their armor stripped, for example. So we could go ahead and we could run Ash and use our Seeking Shuriken build. So I believe that's my config C. And then just go ahead and change the colors of that. Go ahead and mod for viral damage. And to mod for that, you just basically replace Shocking Touch with Northwind. And then we go ahead and kill the bad guys whenever their armor is, of course, stripped. So let's see. You see that we deal a decent amount of damage to them. Of course, that was like a finisher there, so just keep it in mind. It's very damaging. So, you know, this is going to be how your weapon performs if your entire team is running 4x corrosive projection, which in an ideal situation, like with experienced players, this is what you should be doing. So these enemies just kind of get dropped, you know. It's really that straightforward. The viral damage is on there because, like, you're going to be proccing status effects left, right, and center. And that viral proc is actually going to eat away or reduce the enemy's maximum health, along with things like your what's it called, your bleed procs, you know. You have your bleed procs coming into play, you have your viral procs coming into play, things like that. Obviously, the enemy has no armor, so Viro's going to deal more damage against them just base, so the weapon is kind of insane in that regard. So I really recommend this weapon. I think it's great. I believe you get this from the market, and it has literally became one of my favorite hammers in the game. And that's, I barely use hammers, you know. Hammers are not my go-to in Warframe, but this weapon has made me change my mind, and I would not have a problem taking this weapon into something like a T4 defense, you know, back in the day, where the enemies would start off at a relatively high level. So basically like MOT in the Void or whatever, you know, you could take this weapon into, have your 4x corrosive projection if you're playing in a squad, and do very well with it. So it's just an example of one of those weapons, like, you know, even though it's not the best weapon in the game, like, it's not the Broken War or anything with the, with Crimson Dervish, or it's not the Atarax with, like, you know, obviously your maiming strike and stuff like that. It just basically goes to show that, like, your weapon doesn't have to be the best weapon for it to perform very well at endgame content. So, just giving you guys a second look at the build. Obviously, there's a few things you could swap in and out. Like, you could throw Life Strike on here. You could probably maybe throw off, or not throw off, but take off Weeping Wounds or something like that there. If you don't have it, you could replace it with something like Organ Shatter, Life Strike, Healing Return, etc. I believe Healing Return works. I'm not too sure, but you know, it's a super fun weapon. I recommend running it. I don't recommend running IPS mods on it though, because I mean, you're not going to get that big of an increase in damage if you're using something like Buzzkill or Jagged Edge. Really, you'd be better off just running the third element in that case. But it's totally up to you. I think this weapon's great. I recommend picking it up. It's got a cool theme. And yeah, that's really all there is to say about it. So anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead, hit that like button below. If you want to see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.